I'm Scott from Cognition AI, and I'm going to tell you guys a little bit about the early makings of Devin. We're still super early on, and also a little bit about kind of the space as a whole and what's coming next. I thought it'd be nice to start with the demo first. It sounds like some of you guys have already seen some of the videos, but I brought a nice custom one here for the World's Fair today. So I'll just show that quickly. And here I basically said, hey, Devin, this was this morning, by the way. This is a huge scramble. I said, hey, Devin, I want you to build a mobile-friendly website to play the name game. So I have a lot of trouble memorizing names and faces. I don't know about you guys. But I basically just said, here's a TSV file of a bunch of names and faces. These are all the speakers here at the World's Fair this week. And I said, can you set up the game so that you show two different random faces and then show the names of one of them and have me guess which one is which, right? And I give kind of a few instructions on how the game should work. And so Devin is a fully autonomous software engineer. And what that means is Devin has access to all the same tools that a human software engineer would have when it was building, when they're building something like this. And so the first thing that Devin's going to do is Devin's going to make a plan. And you can see here, kind of a basic plan coming out. One of the interesting things about this is the plan changes a lot over time. And so, as you get new information or new feedback, you update your plan accordingly with that too. After that, Devin's basically just running this the same way that a human would. And so if you can take a look, Devin makes a new directory for the name game website, starts a new React app, all the same primitives, works on building it out and building the code, reads the TSV file to take a look at what's going on here, and is just kind of generally working through it and jumping through. It comes out and deploys this first version after some minutes, and I'll just pull this up quickly. So that's what this looks like. It's closed, but not quite there, right? I mean, it's still showing the names, and I think maybe I didn't quite specify that exactly. But you can click the name and got that correct. And so I just went ahead and just gave it some more feedback in plain English. And so I said, hey, can you hide the two names until I click on the answer? And also, can you probably restyle the play again button? It's like, somehow it's a little off on this page. And I kept going and just kind of gave it more and more feedback over time. And I also asked it, hey, can you add a streak counter as well? Can you keep track of how many I got correct and reset to 0? A few of these other things. And the website it ultimately deployed was this one right here. And so this is Justine, for example. Keeps track of my streak, and you can see it's kind of ramping it up. And so if I were to, for example, if I got this one wrong on purpose, then you would see the streak would reset to 0, and it would go on. And so I actually played this game and learned the names of everyone, which was super helpful, by the way. And you guys can play it too. It's right here if you want to try it out. This has all the speakers. I think it was something like 170 speakers here at the World's Fair this week. So this is kind of a cool example. But I want to highlight how different the world is if software engineering is just this easy. If you can just explain exactly what you want in plain English and get that out. And so this is obviously kind of a toy use case, and it's perhaps useful, but we use Devin all the time ourselves when we're building Devin, actually. And by the way, obviously I didn't make this website myself. I just said, hey, can you build me this website with the QR code and whatever, and Devin built that too. But here's a quick example of Devin that we're using ourselves in production. And so, if you take a quick look here, for example, there's this whole search bar, and there's all the sessions, and you can search across sessions, right? Devin actually made that in the Devin repository. You can see here, Bryce is on our team, and Bryce was asking, hey, Devin, can you go into the Devin sessions list, create a search bar component, here's what I need you to do. And so there's a few features about this in particular that are obviously tuned for working in a production code base. You can see here that Devin started from a snapshot. So we have a machine instance loaded where it's cloned from. It has a playbook, so it knows like a lot of the details about our repositories. And then it's also just able to generally work within our Git environment. So you'll see it just make a PR and interact with all those same tools. And so I'll just kind of go through this quickly. So yeah, Devin says absolutely, makes the first pull request. Bryce continues, and again, you're just giving feedback in plain English, right? And you say, hey, this is a great start. Now could you add a magnifying glass and make it idiomatic? Use phosphor, Lucy. It's up to you, right? And Devin says, yeah, sure, I'll build that. And Bryce says, oh, by the way, no need to test. I trust you. And Devin says, by the way, I'm dealing with a bit of an issue with the login process. You know, it's just like you're working with another engineer, right? And Bryce says, okay, bro. And you know, it kind of builds it all and gets the PR, and this PR was actually merged, and this is, you know, the search bar, right? And similarly, you know, a lot of the API integrations that Devin has were built by Devin. You know, a lot of our own internal dashboards and metrics tracking within Devin were actually also built by Devin. And it's been kind of a fun one to see, like, Devin building the company with the company as well. So cool, yeah, I want to talk a little bit about, you know, our journey so far and about what's happening in the space as well. And so, you know, we got started back in November. So it's been about 7 months now. It's kind of funny, we started in a hacker house in Burlingame, and it was basically just, a lot of us had already like lived together at that point. You know, we'd all had our own journeys in AI, and we just knew that we wanted to build something together. And we obviously knew that we wanted to do something in code and build a coding agent. And then that hacker house in the Bay Area. After that, there was another hacker house in New York. Then there was another hacker house in the Bay Area. So we've been going back and forth between New York and the Bay for basically the last 7 months. I think at this point we are now going to like settle in the Bay, but it's been going back and forth and getting like a slightly bigger Airbnb each time because the team also gets a little bit bigger. But you know, why Devin in particular? And you know, this is a particular question that I'm really passionate about, which is, you know, language models have been pretty big. I think that's fair to say. And you know, the first wave of generative AI is what I generally call these text completion products, right? And you know, that makes a lot of natural sense if you think about it, that obviously the interface of a language model is text completion, right? You give it a prefix and it completes the suffix from there. And so if you think about ChatGPT, if you think about a lot of these Q&A products, if you think about, you know, writing marketing copy or answering customer support, or even GitHub Copilot and Cursor and products like that, you know, obviously you know, a lot of these are really great products. And very natural use case where you have the prefix so far and you're asking the model to complete what's next in the suffix, right? And it does that for you, and that's a tool that's useful, right? And I think we're entering this new wave where, you know, we're going beyond that and actually introducing some amount of autonomous decision making. And obviously, you know, that's typically referred to in our space as agents, right? And you know, there's all sorts of new things that you unlock, right? There's a lot higher bar of consistency that you require, but there's new things that you unlock with that. And so it's been an interesting one because it's both a very deep core capabilities question of getting Devin to solve these, but also a pretty interesting product design problem because I think the UX of agents is something that's extremely new. And then why code in particular? You know, a few different things. Obviously, we're all coding nerds as well. You know, we're all engineers, and so the idea of teaching AI to code is you know, one of the coolest things that we could think of. But beyond that, I think there's a few particular reasons that code with agents works especially well. You know, one is that obviously there's so much more to being a software engineer than typing the code, right? A lot of the work that you're going to do is, you know, you're going to be looking into a bug, you're going to be looking at the different files of the code base, maybe you're going to be running this or that command, maybe you're going to be pulling up documentation, maybe you're going to run the front end yourself to reproduce the bug. You know, you look at this thing, you make this edit, you try it again. All of this work here obviously is, you know, that's what software engineering is, right? More so than just typing the code in the file, which leads very naturally to an agentic workflow. You know, another part which I think is closely related is the ability to iterate with code feedback. And so what I mean by that is, you know, if you were given an entire production code base and you were told, hey, this has this one bug, I need you to fix it, here's the bug. You know, and it's, let's say it's like thousands of files and, you know, hundreds of thousands of lines of code. I mean, it'd be pretty tough, honestly, for most humans. It's also going to be quite tough for AIs as well. And obviously, the way that we do this in practice is, you know, you go and add print statements, you pull up the logs, you check the monitoring, you know, you jump back and forth between different files, you try and diagnose it, right? Each of these things that you're doing, you know, you're making a decision and then you're running actual code to find out what happened. And from that, you're able to iterate, and it just gives you a much cleaner path to solve the problem in front of you. And similarly, you know, that kind of lends very well to agents. And the last thing I just want to mention is, you know, how fast model agentic capabilities are improving. And so, you know, 2 years ago, like even something as simple as this name game demo, I think would have been almost unthinkable. And you know, you think about where things are going and where things are going to be 2 years from now. I think there's a lot of, you know, the data, the right training, and so on. That's really, really rapidly improving in the space. And then, again, beyond the capabilities problem, there's actually a really deep UX problem as well. And at a high level, I think what's kind of happening here is when we're building agents, and I think all of us in the space are quite new to agents, the immediate first things I think to map to are, how we use software today, and also how we talk with other humans, right? And so, even a lot of the features in Devin are essentially looking over your own intern's shoulder. You can see their computer, and you can see what commands they're running and things like that. The thing is, I think an agent is actually pretty different from both. There's a lot of nuances and details of parallel work, information gathering, how it manages context, et cetera, that are super, super different. And it's actually a quite deep problem from a product perspective as well. And just to give you guys a bit of a sense of that, like here's just a kind of a short list of some of the features that we've built into the product. And so, obviously there's Devin being able to use the shell, edit code, browse the web, but there's all these other things, right? Being able to fork and roll back sessions, being able to handle integrations with Slack and GitHub, being able to handle playbooks, to store machine snapshots, to keep track of secrets, to be able to work with the right tools for verification. All of this is part of the actual product iteration, right? Which is, on its own, I think, already an incredibly, incredibly dense problem. And I think, honestly, we're going to see actually a lot more iteration with that over time. And I just wanted to show kind of a new feature which we just recently shipped, which is the ability to use Devin's machine, which is kind of, again, it's the kind of thing that's not always, there's not necessarily a very close parallel in, in the software that we have today, right? But the ability to just have a VS Code live share in Devin's machine, and if you want to collaborate with Devin and say, hey, oh, there's these couple lines, like, you should make this edit. I went ahead and did that edit for you, and you can just talk with Devin and do that, right? So there's a lot more room to go and a lot to iterate on in the space. One of the other things I wanted to mention too is just how much we've seen it changing our own workflow. So you guys saw like a simple example of Devin building the search bar, but we actually handle tasks in a much more async way now. One of the cool kind of features of Devin, I'd say, is if as an engineer you're working on, let's say, 4 different tasks today, you just give one to Devin number 1, you give the second one to Devin number 2, the third one to Devin number 3. You have 4 Devins that are all running in parallel, and it's kind of turning every engineer into an engineering manager is almost how I describe it. I think the Devins are very like enthusiastic interns is what I'd say. I mean, they try very hard. They're obviously they don't know everything. They get little things wrong. They ask a lot of questions, but you're kind of working with each of them and having them iterate. And so here's just kind of a fun example. I mean, this is literally from earlier today, but we were talking about some particular feature and about what we wanted to build. In this case, it was a pretty simple thing of changing the color, but it's just as simple as just saying in Slack, in the conversation, hey, at Devin, can you just change this thing? And then Devin goes and makes the PR, and then you hit merge, And so, we've had a lot of occasions where we're, in the gym or in the car or something, and now you can actually write code, because, you can tell Devin exactly what you want Devin to do. You just don't have your whole computer with you and can't type everything, but, being able to just kind of describe what you want to Devin and then being able to review the code afterward actually works really well. So what's next? I think this is a really important question. And obviously, I think the technology is extremely early today. But where do these things go in a few years? And also what happens with software engineering? I think that there's been a lot of uncertainty about that question. And as we're using Devin more and more, I think one of the big things that we see actually is, this is kind of obvious perhaps, but Devin is not the one that decides what to do or what to build. And there's this core part of software engineering. The way I describe it is like software engineers everywhere, are doing really 2 jobs at once, right? And the first job is basically problem solving with code. You're given a problem and you're breaking down exactly what is the solution you're going to build. What is the architecture that you're going to use? What are all the flows and the details and the edge cases that might come up, and kind of architecting your exact solution. And then the second part is once you have that, you're dealing with debugging or implementing different functions or writing unit tests or all of the other things that kind of go into this implementation of something that you want to do, right? And I think right now, the average software engineer is probably spending like 10 or 20% of the time on that first thinking part, and they're spending 80 or 90% of the time on that implementation part. And what we really see is Devin actually just frees you up to do more of the first part, and I think the future of Devin, again, it's very, very early, but I think as Devin gets better, we're going to see more of that where Devin just frees up the implementation for you, where you don't have to go figure out how to set up Kubernetes. You don't have to go like debug all these like APIs that are broken. You don't have to go like deal with version changes or migrations or all of these other things that take up a lot of time in software engineering, right? But you actually are spending all your time on figuring out how to solve the problems in front of you. It's a little more like a mix between a technical architect and a product manager almost, right? And so I think software engineering, the job that we call software engineering, is going to change. But I think practically, like, there's actually going to be way more software engineers than ever. And I think there's a lot of precedent for that too. Programming back then, used to mean punch cards, and then after that, it used to mean assembly, and then after that, it used to mean C, right? And as these things have gone on, I mean, most people aren't using punch cards anymore, but there's actually way more programmers than before, right? And I think one of the things that's easy to underestimate is just how much more code there is to write. And it's funny to think about, I think, because obviously we all love software here in this room. I would say I think software has been the #1 driver of progress in the world in the last 40 or 50 years. And yet, despite that, I think our demand for software to be built is actually probably a lot more than 10x what we're currently getting. And so I think what happens is we get to open up the power of software engineering to a lot more people, and every single software engineer gets to be 5 or 10x more effective, but we actually do a lot more software engineering. Cool. Yeah, so that's all I had, but yeah, we'd love to open the floor if there's any questions. Yeah, right here in the front. Great question, great question. So we've been ramping up access. Every week we've been letting on more and more people. We've also been sizing up with our enterprise customers. We have a lot of wait lists to get through, so we're doing it as fast as we can, but we'd love to get you guys access as soon as possible. Yeah, yeah. All the way in the back over there. Yeah, in the red. Yeah, exactly. So in our code base, for example, Devin has all the setup that it needs. It has a machine that's basically instantiated where it can run the dev environment, it can run the server, it can run the front end. And so if you're asking it, hey, I need you to debug this particular thing, it'll just pull it up itself and then reproduce it, and then it'll debug it and try it again. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, any other questions? Right here? Yeah.
Would be good for you to repeat the question.
Oh, of course, yeah. So, sorry, so someone asked, with all of these simpler tasks getting solved, what happens to, all the junior engineers or the interns who obviously need to learn how to code? I think what happens, honestly, is I think that demand is going to just keep rising with supply. And I think the training process is going to change a little bit, but, I think a lot of these core fundamentals of, if you think of someone as, when you say someone's a really great engineer, typically you don't mean that they type really fast, although maybe they do that too, right? You typically mean that they have a really great understanding of problems, they know all the different architectures, they never miss an edge case, stuff like that, right? And so those are the fundamentals that I think are always going to matter. And I think, basically, I think interns or junior engineers are going to get more exposed to getting to use those fundamentals earlier and earlier. Yeah. Yeah, okay, so someone asked, what are the biggest challenges to realizing the vision of a future suite? There's a lot. I mean, it's basically everything, as you can imagine. I mean, there's speed, there's consistency, there's access, there's integrations, there's the right product UX. And I think all of these things, one of the cool things I think is just how much of a rising tide there is everywhere. And so, obviously we're going to do our best work on it, but every new hardware release is amazing for it. Every new foundation model that comes out is amazing. Every new piece of agentic research. And I think this is the kind of thing where I think there will be a lot of different optimizations that come in different parts of the stack that make this agentic flow better and better and better. But it won't just be one small thing, but I think it'll be pretty fast.
So thank you so much.
Thank you guys so much.